I'm Hannah, and I met John in college, and we clicked instantly. He was charming, funny, and ambitious. We got married right after graduation and started building our life together. When our daughter Sophie was born, I was over the moon. I poured all my love and energy into raising her, determined to give her the best start in life. I believed in setting boundaries and instilling discipline. Knowledge is power, I'd always tell her. Study hard and you'll go far. John, on the other hand, had a different parenting style. He'd shower Sophie with gifts, buy her sweets, and let her get away with things I wouldn't. "Come on, Hannah," he'd say. "Let her be a kid." It bothered me, but I figured we balanced each other out. As Sophie grew older, it became clear she was a daddy's girl. She'd run to John with her problems, laugh at his jokes, and light up when he came home from work. With me, it was all eye rolls and yes, mom in that tone, teenager's perfect. I'd bite my tongue, reminding myself that Sophie would understand when she was older. She'd see that my strict approach came from a place of love. But even at 17, Sophie remained firmly in her father's camp. It stung, but I consoled myself with the thought that I was doing right by her in the long run. Despite these small frustrations, I considered myself fulfilled. I had a successful career at a respected clinic, a husband who still made me laugh, and a daughter who, despite our differences, I adored. Life was good, or so I thought. Everything changed on a crisp autumn day. I was doing laundry, a mundane task I'd done 1,000 times before. As I emptied John's coat pockets, my fingers brushed against a piece of paper. I pulled it out, expecting a grocery receipt or a dry cleaning ticket. Instead, I found myself staring at a receipt from an upscale perfume store. The perfume listed was an expensive brand I'd never wear. Too floral, too sweet. John knew I preferred subtler scents. I stood there, the washing machine humming in the background, as 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. Was it a surprise gift? But my birthday had passed, and our anniversary was months away. Was it for his mother? But she was allergic to most perfumes. With shaking hands, I took a picture of the receipt with my phone. Then, carefully, I placed it back in his pocket. I needed time to think, to process this information without jumping to conclusions. That evening, when John was in the shower, I checked his coat again. The receipt was gone. I kept my discovery to myself, not breathing a word to John or Sophie, but now that my eyes were open, I couldn't stop noticing things. It was like a fog had lifted, revealing a landscape I didn't recognize. John's late nights at work weren't new, but now they felt different. "Big project, honey," he'd say, kissing me on the cheek as he left. "Don't wait up," I'd nod and smile, all the while wondering who he was really meeting. His new haircut caught my attention too. He'd always been particular about his appearance, but this was different. Younger. Trendier. When I complimented him, he shrugged it off. Thought I'd try something new. The weekend fishing trips were the worst. Every other Saturday he'd load up his gear and head out to meet his buddies. "Fish are really biting lately," he'd say with a grin. I'd watch him drive away, wondering if he even owned a fishing rod anymore. Before finding that receipt, I hadn't connected these dots. Now they formed a picture I couldn't unsee. The thought I'd been avoiding burst to the surface. John had a mistress. I tried to shake it off. This was John, my John. The man who held my hand through 20 hours of labor. The guy who surprised me with flowers on random Tuesdays. He wouldn't cheat. But the doubt gnawed at me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, listening to John's steady breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of her. One sleepless night, I found myself scrolling through Facebook. A name caught my eye: Mike Thompson. We'd gone to high school together, and I vaguely remembered he'd become a private investigator. Before I could talk myself out of it, I sent him a message. We met at a coffee shop across town the next day. I took a deep breath and spilled everything. The receipt, John's behavior, my suspicions. Mike listened without interrupting, his face neutral. Mike agreed to take the case. As I watched him leave, I felt a mix of relief and dread. Soon I'd have answers, but did I really want them? The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. I went through the motions, smiling at my patients, helping Sophie with her schoolwork, making small talk with John over dinner. But inside, I was a mess. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd jump, thinking it was Mike with news. Every time John came home late, I'd search his face for signs of guilt. Every time Sophie mentioned her dad, I'd wonder if she knew something I didn't. "You okay, Mom?" Sophie asked one evening, catching me staring blankly at the wall. "You seem off." I plastered on a smile. "Just tired, sweetie. Lots of clients this week." She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. I felt a pang of guilt for lying to her, but what could I say? Your dad might be cheating on me, and I've hired someone to spy on him. John, caught up in whatever or whoever was occupying his time, didn't seem to notice anything amiss. Part of me was relieved, part of me was furious that he could be so oblivious to my pain. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was between clients when my phone buzzed. Mike's name flashed on the screen, and my heart leapt into my throat. "Hannah? Can we meet?" His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop in an hour. The rest of my appointments were a blur. I went through the motions, smiling and nodding at my clients while my mind raced. Mike was already there when I arrived, a thick manila envelope on the table in front of him. My stomach dropped at the sight of it. "Hannah." Mike pushed the envelope towards me. "It's all in here. Photos, dates, locations. I'm sorry, Hannah, but your suspicions were right." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. The first photo hit me like a punch to the gut. John, my John, with his arms around a younger woman. They were laughing, looking into each other's eyes with unmistakable affection. "Who is she?" I managed to choke out. "Alicia Benson," Mike replied. "She's 28, works at John's company. She's the director's daughter." I flipped through more photos. John and Alicia at restaurants, walking in the park, boarding a yacht. Each image was a fresh wound. "They've been seeing each other for over a year," Mike continued. "From what I've gathered, it's serious. They've talked about a future together." I nodded numbly, barely registering his words. Then a photo made me gasp. It showed John and Alicia at a cafe, but they weren't alone. Sitting with them, smiling and laughing, was Sophie. "No," I whispered. "It can't be." Mike's voice was gentle. "I'm sorry, Hannah, but Sophie knows about the affair. She's met with them several times. Those weekends she said she was with friends? She was with them on Alicia's yacht. There's more. John and Alicia have been buying Sophie expensive gifts. Designer clothes. Jewelry. I think they're trying to buy her silence." I don't remember the drive home. Thankfully, the house was empty when I arrived. I moved on autopilot, packing a small suitcase with clothes and essentials. I couldn't stay here, couldn't face John or Sophie. I checked into a hotel across town, my mind still reeling. Once in my room, I called my boss at the clinic and took 2 weeks off, unpaid. Family emergency. I turned off my phone and sank onto the bed. The envelope seemed to mock me from the bedside table. Unable to help myself, I opened it again. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those damning photos. Sophie's smile as she hugged Alicia. John's arm around them both. My anger, which had started as a slow simmer, began to boil over. For years I'd been the understanding one, the peacemaker, the one who bent over backwards to keep everyone happy. Well, I was done with that. My eyes fell on my laptop. Without really thinking, I opened it and logged into my bank account. There it was, Sophie's college fund. I'd been squirreling away money for years, determined to give her the best education possible. It was my way of showing love, even when she pushed me away. Now, looking at that balance, all I could think about was how Sophie had betrayed me. How she'd lied to my face, spent time with that woman, accepted her gifts. My daughter, who I'd sacrificed so much for, had stabbed me in the back. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. Years ago, before Sophie was born, I dreamed of opening my own cosmetology office. But then life happened: marriage, a baby, mortgage payments. My dream got pushed aside. I stared at the account balance. It was enough. Enough to start over, to finally pursue my own dreams instead of everyone else's. You know what I said out loud to the empty hotel room? Screw it. This money isn't for Sophie anymore. It's for me. The words hung in the air, both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had a future. even if it wasn't the one I'd planned. Emotionally drained, I finally drifted off to sleep, my phone still turned off. The next morning I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. For a blissful moment I forgot everything, then reality came crashing back. With a deep breath I turned on my phone. It immediately exploded with notifications. Missed calls from John and Sophie, voicemails, text messages asking where I was, if I was okay. Their concern, which once would have melted my heart, now felt like acid in my veins. How dare they pretend to care now? I didn't bother listening to the voicemails or reading the texts. Instead, I got dressed, packed my bag and checked out of the hotel. It was time to face the music. The drive home felt surreal. Part of me wanted to keep driving, to disappear and start a new life somewhere else. But I squashed that impulse. I needed closure. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw John's car and Sophie's bike. They were both home. Good. I walked in, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. John and Sophie rushed out of the living room, their faces a mix of relief and anxiety. "Hannah, where have you been?" "We've been so worried," John exclaimed, moving to hug me. Sophie chimed in, her voice shrill with concern. "Mom, are you okay? Why didn't you answer our calls?" I stepped back, avoiding John's embrace. A cold laugh escaped me, stopping them both in their tracks. Without a word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I tossed it on the coffee table, photos spilling out. John and Sophie stared at the images, their faces draining of color. There they were, in glossy 8x10s, John with Alicia, Sophie with them both. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. John was the first to recover, his shock morphing into defensive anger. "Hannah, it's not what you think," he started, his voice placating. "Alicia and I were just friends, and Sophie, she..." "Don't you dare drag Sophie into your lies," I cut him off, my voice ice cold. Sophie jumped in, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Mom, please, I can explain. I only met her a few times, I didn't know." I held up a hand, silencing them both. "Save it, I know everything. The yacht trips, the expensive gifts, the dinners. Every lie, every betrayal." They exchanged a look, and I saw the moment they realized their act wasn't working. The mask slipped away, revealing the strangers beneath. John's face hardened, all pretense of remorse vanishing. "Fine," he said coldly. "You want the truth? Yes, I'm with Alicia. She's young, beautiful, and rich. She makes me feel alive in a way you haven't in years." His words were like a slap to the face, but I refused to flinch. Instead, I turned to Sophie, waiting for her contribution to this character assassination. She didn't disappoint. "Alicia is amazing, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "She's successful, stylish, fun, not strict and boring like you." I absorbed their words, each one a fresh wound. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "I see," I said, my voice steady. "Well, let me tell you both something. John, I want a divorce. I'll have my lawyer contact you." John's eyes widened, but before he could speak, I turned to Sophie. "And you, young lady, you can forget about me paying for your college tuition. If Alicia is so amazing, maybe she can foot the bill." Sophie's jaw dropped. "What? You can't do that. That's my money. I've been counting on it. I want to get into my dream school." "Should have thought about that before you stabbed me in the back," I replied, unmoved by her crocodile tears. "Mom, please," she sobbed, her cool demeanor crumbling. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said. Please forgive me. I need that money." But her earlier words echoed in my mind. Strict, boring. Worse than the other woman. Ignoring their protests, I went upstairs and packed the rest of my belongings. As I came back down, suitcase in hand, John blocked my path. "Hannah, let's talk about this rationally," he said, his tone businesslike. "The house, our assets." "My lawyer will be in touch," I interrupted, pushing past him. "I'm done talking to you." The next few weeks passed in a blur. I found a small apartment and threw myself into the logistics of dismantling a 20-year marriage. I hired a lawyer and requested a mediator, determined to handle this divorce as cleanly as possible. The last thing I wanted was a drawn-out, messy court battle. Sophie called incessantly at first. When I didn't pick up, she resorted to texts, then emails. Each message was a mix of apology and demand. I read each one, my heart breaking anew every time. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself staring at my phone, Sophie's number on the screen. My finger would hover over the call button, a war raging inside me. Part of me yearned to hear her voice, to believe her apologies. But then I'd remember her cruel words, her secret meetings with John and Alicia, and I'd put the phone down. Days turned into weeks. Each meeting with John was a test of endurance, conducted in the sterile environment of our lawyers' offices. The man I once loved was now just another face across the conference table, all business and cold efficiency. One day, as I settled into my usual chair, the door opened and Sophie walked in behind John. My heart clenched at the sight of her, but her expression stopped any warm feelings cold. She looked at me with a mixture of condescension and triumph that took my breath away. "Hello, Mother," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I hope you don't mind me joining today." Before I could respond, she continued, "I just wanted to let you know that I won't be needing your pathetic money after all. Alicia has generously offered to pay for my education at any top college in the States." She paused, clearly savoring the moment. "Oh, and I'll be living with Dad and Alicia from now on. We're going to be one big, happy family." I felt the eyes of our lawyers and the mediator on me, waiting for my reaction. But I was too tired, too drained to feel much of anything anymore. I simply shrugged. "If that's what you want, Sophie," I said, my voice flat, "I hope you'll be happy." Something flickered in her eyes, disappointment. Had she been hoping for a bigger reaction? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same smug look. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of legal jargon and asset division. In the end, John and I split everything down the middle. The house would be sold, with the proceeds divided equally between us. With my share from the house sale and the money I'd saved for Sophie's college fund, I had enough to make a fresh start. I found a small but cozy apartment and, after much soul-searching, decided to take a leap of faith. I quit my job at the clinic and threw myself into creating a business plan for my own cosmetology office. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. All those years of experience, all the dreams I'd put on hold, it was time to put them to use. Weeks of planning, renovating, and nervous anticipation followed. But finally, Hannah's Beauty Haven opened its doors. Those first few months were a whirlwind of long hours, social media marketing blitzes, and the slow but steady growth of my client base. In quiet moments, usually late at night when the day's work was done, I'd find myself scrolling through social media. Sophie's posts would appear on my feed, pictures of her in designer clothes, lounging on Alicia's yacht, always smiling, always looking carefree and happy. Each image was a knife to my heart. I'd wonder if she ever thought of me, if she missed me at all. When her 18th birthday rolled around, I sent her a message wishing her well. Same for her high school graduation. Both went unanswered. A year had passed since the divorce, and life had settled into a new rhythm. My cosmetology office, once just a dream, was now a thriving reality. The steady stream of loyal clients from my clinic days, combined with a growing number of new faces, kept me busier than I'd ever been. I'd even hired 2 assistants to help manage the workload. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, as I was finishing up with a client, my phone buzzed. It was my cousin, Sarah. "Hannah, you won't believe what I just saw," she said, her voice a mix of concern and disbelief. "I was at the Meadowbrook supermarket, you know, the one on the other side of town, and I swear I saw Sophie working at the checkout." My heart skipped a beat. "Sophie? Are you sure?" "Positive." She looked different, thinner, tired, but it was definitely her. I thanked Sarah and hung up, my mind reeling. Sophie, working at a supermarket. What about college? What about Alicia's promise to fund her education? That night, after closing the office, I did something I hadn't done in months. I looked up Sophie's social media. What I found shocked me. All her glamorous photos with John and Alicia were gone. There were no updates, no college move-in pictures, nothing. Her once active profile was a digital ghost town. For days I wrestled with what to do. Part of me wanted to rush to the supermarket to demand answers. But another part, the part still nursing the wounds of betrayal, held me back. Finally, on my day off, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the Meadowbrook supermarket, my heart pounding as I walked through the automatic doors. And there she was, Sophie, my baby girl, looking so different from the confident young woman who'd sneered at me in the lawyer's office. She was thin, almost gaunt, dark circles under her eyes as she mechanically scanned items at the checkout. Our eyes met, and I saw a flash of something. Embarrassment? Shame? Before I could decipher it, she looked away, her cheeks flushing. I approached her checkout, my steps hesitant. "Sophie." She glanced up, then quickly back down at the register. "What do you want?" Her voice was harsh, defensive. "I'd like to talk. Maybe we could get coffee after your shift." "I don't want to talk to you," she snapped, still not meeting my eyes. "Please leave." "Sophie, please." I said leave. She finally looked at me, her eyes blazing with a mix of anger and something else. Was it fear? Stunned by her vehemence, I backed away. Other customers were starting to stare. With a heavy heart, I left the supermarket, climbing into my car with shaking hands. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of questions. What had happened? Where were John and Alicia? Why wasn't Sophie in college? For days after, I waited for a call, a text, anything. But my phone remained stubbornly silent. I thought about going back to the supermarket, but Sophie's words rang in my ears. "I don't want to talk to you." Just as I was beginning to lose hope, my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, I answered. Mom. Sophie's voice, small and uncertain, came through the speaker. "Can we meet, please?" We agreed to meet at a small cafe near my office. As I waited, my mind raced with possibilities. When Sophie walked in, my breath caught. She looked so different from the glowing, confident girl in those yacht photos, so much older than her years. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of unsaid words hanging between us. Finally, Sophie spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything." And then, like a dam breaking, the story poured out of her. At first, living with John and Alicia had been a dream. Designer clothes, yacht trips, promises of a bright future. But the honeymoon period didn't last. Alicia started making comments, Sophie said, her eyes fixed on her untouched coffee. Little digs about how much space I took up, how expensive I was. Then she told Dad I couldn't live with them anymore, that there was no money for college. I gasped. "But your father?" Surely he didn't agree. Sophie's bitter laugh was answer enough. He said I was an adult now, that I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. "They kicked me out, Mom. I had nowhere to go." "Why didn't you call me?" I asked, reaching for her hand across the table. She pulled away, tears in her eyes. I was so ashamed. And then I realized, this must be how you felt when we betrayed you. I couldn't face you after that. My heart broke for her, even as a small, petty part of me whispered, "Good. Now she knows how it feels." "I'm sharing a crappy apartment with a coworker," Sophie continued. "The supermarket job barely covers rent and food. I feel so useless." I wanted to wrap her in my arms, to tell her everything would be okay. But I knew it wasn't that simple. "Sophie," I said gently, "I'm so sorry you're going through this, but you're right, you did betray me. Actions have consequences, and this is something you need to work through." We both cried then, mourning the lost year, the broken trust, the pain we'd caused each other. As we parted, something had shifted between us. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. That night I tossed and turned, Sophie's story playing on repeat in my mind. By morning I'd made a decision. I called Sophie. "I have a proposition for you," I said. "I need an administrator at my office. The pay's not great, but it's better than the supermarket. And maybe we can start rebuilding from there." There was a long pause. Then, "Yes, I'd like that. Thank you, Mom." It's been 6 months since that day. Sophie works at my office now, learning the business from the ground up. She's saving for community college, determined to make it on her own merit this time. Our relationship is a work in progress. There are good days and bad days, moments of connection and moments of tension. The trust we once had is slowly, painstakingly being rebuilt, one day at a time. As I watch Sophie greet a client with a warm smile, I feel a glimmer of hope. We're not the same people we were before the betrayal, the divorce, the year of silence. But maybe, just maybe, we can be something new, something stronger.
I'm Deborah, and I was born into what seemed like a perfect family. My dad worked as an engineer at a local factory, bringing home a good paycheck. Mom stayed at home, taking care of the house. Those early years were happy ones, filled with laughter and love. I remember Dad coming home from work, his face lighting up when he saw me. "There's my little princess," he'd say, scooping me up in his strong arms. Mom would smile, watching us from the kitchen doorway. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I was 7 when everything changed. It started on a regular Tuesday. Dad came home from work looking pale and sweaty. I watched from the stairs as he slumped onto the couch, rubbing his chest. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Mom suggested. Dad shook his head. "Nah, it'll pass. Don't fuss, Sarah." That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Dad suddenly clutched his chest and fell from his chair. Mom screamed, rushing to his side. "Deborah, call 911!" she yelled, her voice shrill with panic. With shaking hands, I dialed the number, telling the operator what happened. The wait for the ambulance felt like an eternity. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Words like heart attack and permanent damage floated around, their meaning lost on my young mind. When Dad finally came home, he wasn't the same. He couldn't work at the factory anymore. Instead, he got a new job in an office, but it didn't pay nearly as well. That's when the fighting started. "We can't afford this, Sarah," Dad would shout, waving bills in the air. "Well, what do you expect me to do about it?" Mom would snap back. "I'm not going to work. That's your job." I'd hide in my room, pillow over my ears, trying to drown out their angry voices. One night, I overheard Mom on the phone with Dad's parents. "You need to help us," she was saying. "We're struggling here." But Grandma and Grandpa weren't having it. "You've got insurance money," Grandma said, her voice crackling through the speaker. "And it's about time you started working too, Sarah. You can't expect John to do it all, especially now." Mom slammed the phone down, muttering under her breath. The fights got worse after that. Mom kept demanding more money, and Dad kept saying we didn't have it. I watched helplessly as Dad grew paler and more tired each day. 3 years after his first heart attack, Dad had another one. This time, he didn't make it. I was 10 years old when I lost my father. After Dad's funeral, things changed fast. I overheard heated arguments between Mom and my grandparents, words flying like daggers. "You're taking everything for yourself," Grandma accused, her voice trembling with anger. "What about Deborah?" John wanted her to be taken care of. Mom's reply was cold. "I'm her mother. I'll decide what's best for her." I didn't understand then what they were fighting about. Money, inheritance, embezzlement. These were just big words to me. All I knew was that Mom seemed different, harder somehow. Before I could make sense of it all, Mom dropped another bombshell. "Deborah, I'm getting married again," she announced one day, not even looking at me as she applied her lipstick. The wedding was a blur. Mom looked happy, but I felt lost. Her new husband, Tom, barely acknowledged me. It didn't take long for me to realize I wasn't part of their plans. One morning, Mom sat me down. "Deborah, you're going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a while." "But why?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Tom and I need some time to ourselves," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. And just like that, I was shipped off to my grandparents' house. It was big and luxurious, nothing like our old home. Grandma and Grandpa were kind, always making sure I had everything I needed. But despite their love, I missed Mom terribly. Months passed. I settled into a routine with my grandparents, finding comfort in their steady presence. but a part of me always hoped Mom would come back for me. Then, out of the blue, she did. "Deborah, pack your bags. You're coming home," Mom said during one of her rare visits. My heart soared. She missed me. She wanted me back. I hugged Grandma and Grandpa goodbye, promising to visit often. But my joy was short-lived. As soon as we got home, I realized why Mom had really brought me back. "This is your baby brother, Jake," she said, handing me a squirming bundle. "You'll be helping me take care of him." Reality hit hard. I wasn't brought back because Mom missed me. I was brought back to be a nanny. My days became a blur of school, chores, and babysitting. While Mom went out with Tom or met her friends, I was left to watch Jake. Homework became an afterthought. Between changing diapers and cleaning the house, there was little time for studying. One evening, as I struggled to calm a colicky Jake while trying to finish a book report, Tom came home early. "Where's your mother?" he asked, frowning at the mess in the living room. "She went out with her friends," I mumbled, bouncing Jake on my hip. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll take him. You try to clean up a bit." As I picked up toys and wiped down surfaces, I couldn't help but wonder, was this what family was supposed to be like? An absent mother, a distant stepfather, and a child forced to grow up too fast? My life as a makeshift nanny took its toll. I was exhausted all the time, falling asleep in class and forgetting assignments. It didn't take long for my teachers to notice. One day, Mrs. Thompson, my English teacher, pulled me aside after class. "Deborah, is everything okay at home?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. I mumbled something about being tired, but Mrs. Thompson wasn't buying it. A week later, I found out she'd called Grandma, and Grandma, in turn, called Mom. After a heated argument, Mom slammed the phone down and turned to me. "Pack your bags," she said coldly. "You're going back to your grandparents." I was torn between relief and hurt. Part of me was glad to escape the endless chores and babysitting, but another part felt rejected all over again. Life at Grandma and Grandpa's was like before, stable, loving, and focused on my well-being. My grades started to improve, and I felt like a kid again. Months passed with barely a word from Mom. Then, out of the blue, Grandma got another call. "Sarah's divorced Tom," Grandma told me later, her voice a mix of surprise and disappointment. "He's taken Jake and moved to another city." I felt a pang of sadness for my little brother, but also a strange sense of relief. At least he was with his dad, who seemed to care more than Mom ever did. That's when Mom discovered social media. Suddenly, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Mom was posting constantly, selfies at clubs, pictures of fancy meals, and lots of photos with a guy who looked barely older, over 18 years old. But it wasn't just new boyfriends Mom was experimenting with. Soon, her posts took a different turn. "Just got my new girls," read one post, accompanied by a photo of Mom in a tight top, her chest suddenly much larger than I remembered. The surgeries didn't stop there. Every few months, there'd be a new post about another procedure. Bigger hips, plumper lips, even her eyes looked different. I watched from afar as Mom transformed herself, post by post, surgery by surgery. The woman in the photos looked nothing like the mother I remembered. It was like watching a stranger play dress-up with my mom's life. Through all of this, Mom never once asked about me. No calls on my birthday, no messages asking how school was going. Nothing. At first, it hurt. I'd cry myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough for her. But as time passed, the pain dulled. I stopped expecting her calls, stopped hoping she'd suddenly remember she had a daughter. The years flew by faster than I could have imagined. Before I knew it, I was standing on the stage in my cap and gown, accepting my high school diploma. Grandma and Grandpa cheered louder than anyone else in the audience. Mom wasn't there, but I'd stopped expecting her to show up long ago. Thanks to my grandparents' generosity, I headed off to college that fall. They insisted on paying for everything, waving away my protests. "Your education is the best investment we could make," Grandma said firmly. "Just focus on your studies." And I did. College was challenging, exciting, and everything I'd hoped for. I made new friends, discovered my passion for marketing, and for the first time in my life, felt like I was truly becoming my own person. 4 years later, I graduated with honors and landed a job at a local advertising firm. The day I got my first paycheck, I knew what I had to do. "I'm moving out," I told Grandma and Grandpa over dinner. "I've found an apartment I can afford." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Are you sure, Deborah?" Grandma asked. "You know you're always welcome here." "I'm sure," I said, squeezing her hand. "It's time for me to stand on my own 2 feet, but I'll visit all the time, I promise." Life settled into a new rhythm. Work was challenging but rewarding, and I was slowly building a life for myself. But as I was flourishing, my grandparents were fading. It started with little things. Grandpa forgetting where he put his glasses, Grandma getting tired more easily. Then came the doctor's appointments, the concerned looks, the hushed phone calls. I spent every free moment with them, trying to repay a fraction of the love and care they'd given me. Weekends were filled with quiet afternoons watching old movies, or just sitting and talking. One chilly autumn morning, I got the call I'd been dreading. Grandpa had passed away in his sleep. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and tearful relatives. Through it all, Grandma was a pillar of strength, but I could see the light had gone out of her eyes. Grandma didn't last long after Grandpa died. It was like she'd lost her will to go on without him. 3 months later, I was planning another funeral. As I was going through Grandma's address book, I found Mom's number and, against my better judgment, sent a text. "Grandma's funeral is tomorrow. It would mean a lot if you came." The reply came hours later. "Sorry, can't make it." Those people were practically strangers to me anyway. Those people, my grandparents, the ones who'd raised me, loved me, supported me. Strangers to her? I deleted her number right then and there. After the funeral, the lawyer called me in to read the will. I sat in his office, feeling numb, as he explained that Grandma and Grandpa had left me everything. Their house, their savings, all of it. "It's a considerable sum," the lawyer said gently. "They wanted to make sure you were taken care of." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Even in death, they were still looking out for me. As I left the lawyer's office, clutching the paperwork, I felt a strange mix of grief and gratitude. I'd lost the 2 people who'd been my rock for so long, but their final gift meant I'd never have to worry about financial security again. The task of sorting through my grandparents' belongings was both emotionally draining and strangely cathartic. Each object held a memory, a piece of the life we'd shared. I worked my way through the house, room by room, until I reached Grandpa's study. His desk was a treasure trove of old documents, each neatly filed away. As I sifted through them, a yellowed envelope caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my father's handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was Dad's will, dated just before he died. As I read, my vision blurred with tears. "To my dear Sarah," it read, "I leave the bulk of our savings. But I ask that a portion be set aside for Deborah's college education. Our daughter's future is important, and I want to ensure she has the best opportunities possible." The paper crumpled in my fist as a wave of anger washed over me. Mom had known all along. She'd had money specifically meant for my education, money Dad had wanted me to have, and she'd kept it all for herself. Suddenly, all those arguments I'd overheard as a child made sense. Grandma and Grandpa accusing Mom of embezzlement, of taking everything for herself. They'd been right. For a moment, I considered calling Mom, demanding an explanation. But what good would it do? She'd made her choices long ago. I decided then and there to let it go. I had a good life, a future ahead of me. I didn't need to dredge up old hurts. Little did I know, the past wasn't done with me yet. A few weeks later, as I was leaving work, my phone rang. I almost dropped it when I saw the caller ID. Mom. "Hello?" I answered, my voice uncertain. "Deborah?" It's your mother," I waited, not sure what to say. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, her voice sounding different than I remembered. "I miss you, sweetheart. I want us to try and fix things between us. Can we meet?" I was speechless. After years of silence, this was the last thing I expected. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's meet." We agreed on a cafe near my office for the following Saturday. When I walked into the cafe, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman waving at me from a corner table looked nothing like the mother I remembered. Her face was taut and unnaturally smooth, her lips plump, her cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. Years of surgeries had transformed her into someone I might have passed on the street without a second glance. We ordered coffee, and for a while, we made awkward small talk. She asked about my job. I asked about her life. It felt surreal, like I was having lunch with a stranger who happened to know details about my childhood. Finally, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Deborah, I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. I haven't been a good mother to you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "After your father died, I was lost. I made a lot of mistakes. I pushed you away when I should have held you close. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this woman, this stranger with my mother's eyes, and felt a complex swirl of emotions. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand explanations for years of neglect, for the money she'd kept from me. But another part, a part I thought had died long ago, just wanted my mom back. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It's been a long time, Mom. A lot has happened." She nodded, looking down at her coffee. "I understand, but I want to try, if you'll let me. I've missed so much of your life. I want to be part of it again, if you'll have me." The next few weeks were surreal. Mom and I met for coffee, went shopping, and even had dinner together a couple of times. It felt strange, like trying on an old sweater that didn't quite fit anymore, but I was cautiously optimistic. One afternoon, as we were finishing up lunch, Mom casually asked, "So, sweetie, did your grandparents leave you anything?" The question caught me off guard. Yeah," I replied hesitantly. "They left me their house and some savings." Mom's eyes lit up in a way that made me uneasy. "Oh, that's wonderful. You know, I've been meaning to ask you a favor." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm getting married again, to Daniel. You remember him, right? He's 16 years younger than me. We want to have a bachelorette party, and I was wondering if we could use your grandparents' house. It's such a lovely place for a celebration." I blinked, trying to process this information. "You're getting married? Again?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Third time's the charm, right? So, about the house?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. "Sure, I guess that would be okay." Mom clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, thank you, darling. You won't regret this." The next day, she came to pick up the keys. "I'll give them back at the wedding," she said, handing me an ornate invitation. "1 month from today. I can't wait for you to be there." As I watched her drive away, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me was happy that Mom wanted me at her wedding. Another part couldn't shake a nagging sense of unease. The weeks flew by, and I was busy with work and my own life. But as the wedding approached, I decided to check on the house, make sure everything was in order for Mom's party. As I pulled up to the curb, I noticed unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Frowning, I walked up to the front door and knocked. A stranger answered. "Can I help you?" he asked, looking confused. "I'm here to check on the house," I said. "I'm the owner." The man's frown deepened. "I think there's been a mistake. My wife and I just bought this house. We're in the middle of moving in." My heart dropped. "That's impossible. This house belongs to me. I inherited it from my grandparents." The man called his wife over, and they explained that they'd bought the house from a woman whose description matched my mother's new look perfectly. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mom had done it again. She'd manipulated me, used me, all to steal my inheritance. I stumbled back to my car, my mind racing. How could she have sold the house? She didn't have the right, unless she'd forged documents. For a moment, I considered calling the police right then and there. But as the initial shock wore off, a cold anger settled in its place. No, I wouldn't go to the police. Not yet. Mom thought she'd won, that she'd pulled off her scheme without a hitch. She was expecting to celebrate her new marriage, to start her new life flush with the money from my grandparents' house. Well, she had another thing coming. The week leading up to Mom's wedding was a flurry of activity. I reached out to every relative I could think of, aunts, uncles, cousins, and told them everything. The fraudulent sale of the house, the years of neglect, the stolen college fund. To my relief, they were unanimously outraged. I outlined my plan, asking each of them to play along at the wedding, to act as if everything was normal until I gave the signal. They all agreed, eager to see justice served. The day of the wedding arrived. I dressed in a beautiful blue dress, my hair and makeup carefully done. To all outward appearances, I was the picture of a supportive daughter. The ceremony was lavish, clearly sparing no expense. My stomach churned, knowing that this extravagance was likely funded by the sale of my grandparents' home. When it came time for the reception, I waited patiently as guest after guest offered their congratulations. Finally, I approached the microphone, a serene smile plastered on my face. I'd like to say a few words about my mother, I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Then, with deliberate slowness, I reached into my purse and pulled out a white cap. The words, "My mother is a thief," blazed across it in bright red letters. I placed it on my head, and around the room, my relatives did the same. The silence was deafening. Mom's face drained of color as I continued. "Let me tell you a story," I said, my voice ringing out in the stunned quiet. A story about a woman who abandoned her child, who stole money meant for that child's education, and who, most recently, fraudulently sold a house she had no right to sell, a house left to her daughter by loving grandparents. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Mom trying to signal me to stop, but I pressed on, recounting years of neglect and deception. And now, I concluded, she stands here, celebrating her wedding with money obtained through fraud, money stolen from her own daughter. The young groom, Daniel, turned to Mom, his face a mask of shock and disgust. "Sarah, is this true?" he demanded. Under the weight of dozens of accusing stares, Mom finally broke. "Yes," she wailed. "But I love you, Daniel. I'd do anything for you. Please, please don't leave me." She fell to her knees, clutching at Daniel's legs, mascara streaking down her face. The beautiful bride was gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered woman. The wedding reception had devolved into utter chaos. Guests were shouting, some in anger, others in disbelief. Amidst the uproar, Mom suddenly sprang to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little rubbish!" she screamed at me, her voice raw with fury. "I should have aborted you when I had the chance. I wish you'd never been born." Her words hit me like a physical blow, but I stood my ground, watching as years of pent-up resentment and bitterness poured out of her. Daniel, who had been standing in shocked silence, finally found his voice. "That's enough," he said, his tone ice-cold. "Sarah, I can't believe I almost married you. You're a monster." With that, he turned on his heel and walked out, leaving Mom standing alone in her white dress, mascara streaking down her face. I took off my cap, the words "my mother is a thief" now seeming almost quaint compared to the ugly truth that had been revealed. With a final, deliberate motion, I threw it at her feet. "Goodbye, Mom," I said quietly, then turned and walked away, leaving her screaming and sobbing behind me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I went straight to the police, filing charges against Mom for fraud and forgery. The case was solid. Between the forged documents, witness testimonies, and Mom's own confession at the wedding, there was no doubt about her guilt. In the end, justice was served. Mom was sentenced to several years in prison for her crimes. She was ordered to return the money from the fraudulent house sale and pay additional compensation for her years of deception. As I stood outside the courthouse after the final hearing, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, that the truth had finally come out. Sadness for the mother I never really had. But mostly, I felt free. Free from the weight of unspoken truths and suppressed anger that I'd carried for so long. With the money from the settlement, I bought myself a cozy little house, smaller than my grandparents', but all mine. I set aside the rest for the future, thinking about the family I hope to have someday. Life settled into a new rhythm. Work was going well, I was making new friends, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy and at peace. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Deborah?" A young man's voice came through. "It's Jake, your brother." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from Jake since we were kids. "I heard about what happened with Mom," he continued. I wanted to hear your side of the story, if that's okay." We talked for hours that night. Jake had been living with his dad since the divorce, shielded from most of Mom's antics. He was shocked by what I told him, but mostly, he seemed sad that we'd lost so many years together. From that day on, Jake and I started rebuilding our relationship. We met for coffee, exchanged texts, and slowly got to know each other as adults. It wasn't always easy. We had a lot of lost time to make up for, but it was worth it. As I sit here now, looking out the window of my new home, I can't help but reflect on the journey that brought me here. It wasn't an easy road, filled with betrayal, hurt, and loss. But it also led me to strength I didn't know I had, to justice long overdue, and to a brother I thought I'd lost.